Hey, we're rolling along here. We're in week 3 here of our series with Ashley Arnold, and Ashley, welcome back to our tips show.
Thank you. This week is interesting. It's one of my favorite topics.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, I can't wait. Let's not keep everybody waiting. Then, what are we talking about this week?
Classification best practices.
I always feel that classification is that foundation. I mean, you mess up that foundation and you don't have good. I mean, you're paying tariffs that you shouldn't be, or you're not paying tariffs that you should be. You're not declaring your free trade agreements correctly and all that. But anyway, so what are we talking about then?
UGAs, there's so much. Yes. Really, one wrong classification number, it snowballs, like you said, into, higher tariffs, into just general exposure otherwise, whether it's 232, ADD. I mean, it can just, our list goes on, right? A classification isn't just a set of numbers. It really is much, much more. So happy to dive into that today.
Cool. Okay. Well, any I guess I'm assuming that you've experienced some of this either through your regular job or in your past, or now with your with any clients that you might have with
For
consulting.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So I began my trade compliance career in classification and all day classified many different products from apparel to machine parts to parts of AC units. I mean, the list goes on and on. Just anything you can think of, I probably have classified it. And I learned very early on, folks will try to tell you this is what we think our classification is. And maybe they've tried to do a little research, whether they're basing that on duty rate or maybe something their friend told them. But you really have to, if you're trying to teach an importer why this is, I think let's lead you this way. Or if you're trying to teach somebody within your department, hey, let me lead you this way. Rulings, giving them all the information, case studies, like you said, like here's a similar product, right? These are all very, very important. You can't just look through the HTS book and say, hey, I think it's this one. And so many times we're seeing that, especially now, with duties creeping up and up. More and more people are looking at their classifications, but we want to make sure that you're looking at it and you're taking everything into account. And if you are unsure about how to classify, please reach out to a professional and do not trust what your supplier puts on your invoice.
Correct. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
that's true. We see that often, right? That people are like, I don't know why now I need to pay all this, and it wasn't even my tariff number that I put on there.
Right, right. Well, you have to think you have a range of importers ranging from small to large, of course, right? And now I think we're seeing more and more how even the small importers have to really audit and pay attention to whether it be, just a courier shipment that's coming in, or whether, the de minimis has went away, or whether, they're using an HTS because their supplier told them. A lot of times it was, well, they know the product best, but we know, especially executive order just came out too, and Mod Act, the importer is responsible. You know
Hmm.
your product best, and you need to be making sure that your products are classified correctly, whether that be working with a consultant or working with a broker. You are the end all be all, though. You have to say to the 10-digit level, this is what this should be.
And actually, what about that argument? Like you said, you pretty much just said it right now that you need to know that. But the argument that a producer in, I don't know, let's say Germany or whatever, anywhere around the world, is sending stuff to you, and they're like, no, it's my product. I made it. I know how it's classified.
Hmm.
You can't tell me, that it's otherwise.
Yeah.
How do you, or what would you
They
suggest?
know the specs of the product, right? They can provide all the details, but honestly, unless you know classification in the United States on this level, because it does vary, right? So
Mhm.
while they are to the 6-digit, you know, pretty across the board, something, let's say, a good example, a t shirt in the United States isn't a t shirt in Canada, right? It's not classified the same way. There are different criteria, right?
Right.
It's hard to explain that sometimes to suppliers. So the best things that importers can say is just give me the details, give me the bill of materials, give me the spec sheets, give me the details. And on this side, because you're responsible, you make the end all be all.
And
That's definitely best advice. Yeah.
right. I was going to say that's also especially important, like with free trade agreements, when you're
Yes.
when the obviously you're buying the product outside of that free trade agreement, let's say, right? And it's not, let's say, USMCA, it's not US, Mexican, or Canadian, and you're
Mhm.
bringing it in from another country, and you want to include it as part of your analysis, and sometimes it could shift. It could do a tariff shift, but if it's not classified correctly, it's not going to shift,
Right.
and you're
Because
losing out on that, right? So
that
that's what you,
classification
yeah.
means everything.
Hmm.
And that leads me to my next point, too, of making sure that you have a justification or a rationale for that classification. Um, all the time, I mentioned rulings earlier, right? I'm a big fan of binding rulings. Just send one into customs. Customs wants to help you, honestly, and binding rulings are very quick, and you can do them online now. It's not in like the old days where we used to have to send paper. So it's just very important to get that classification correct for all the reasons that we've said, but also because how else are you really auditing your entries if that's not correct? Do you know what I mean? Like, you
Hmm.
don't even know that you're paying the right duty. You don't know that, you're paying the right 232s. None of that is correct without that initial classification. Also, want to touch on marketing sometimes. So, you need to classify the product, not always the marketing. I've seen this sometimes with maybe what somebody's calling a pajama set may not always be a pajama set in the eyes of customs, right? So make sure that you're aligned. And if you have questions, because again, I am totally aware that the ENs and the tariff book are not fun to read and they're not easy to understand, then reach out and get help. This is one of those areas where it's okay to ask.
And so you talk about the rulings, the binding rulings. Even though it's you're not the one that filed for it, you can still leverage it. Correct? If it's your product is exactly the same, let's say, right? You can still leverage those binding rulings.
Yes, and you can reference them, right? So
Yeah.
it's always best to get your own because no two product is honestly probably exactly the same. So always
Right.
best to get your own. But it is as your justification. So I may say, I'm classifying this product as this HTS code based on a similar product of the same nature and material in ruling and listed, right? And for people who are classifying all the time, you're not going to always remember this. So that's why it's really important that you're documenting this and you're keeping track because when customs comes back and audit you, they are not going to, you're not going to remember number one. They're not going to use because I used AI as a excuse and they're
Right.
going to want to know. And you're going to look a lot better if you can say, I really looked into this, I did my due diligence, and I found this similar ruling. So, Cross is a great, great tool
It
for
is.
sure,
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
We always say that in our trainings is like
Yeah.
don't ignore cross. And don't
Yeah. And
you know.
another thing, too, I want to point out don't always assume because a product is similar that it's going to have the same HTS within your own product line, right? So if something last season was this, but this season you changed a little something, don't assume it's going to be the same HTS. It's going to be worth it to just go ahead and give it a double check, right?
Hmm.
Because changing a material, changing, a little spec could also change the HTS. So I also say with your classification programs, don't always just set those and forget them. Do good audits as well. Don't always say, oh, this is the same product as whatever the other product code is. Make sure that that's the case.
Correct. Yeah, and I always recommend to people to make sure that they reach out and look for a service provider, a software service provider that where you can keep those catalogs. They're
Yes.
sorted because, I mean, it's good that you're doing. There is something that says customs business, right? You cannot
Hmm.
classify using AI anything beyond the 6-digit level. I mean
Right.
that is not, that's a no-no, right? I mean customs. In fact, we were talking about this in a previous episode about several executive orders. Well, not
Yes.
too far ago, long ago. That was something that CBP came out that said what is considered customs business, correct?
Hmm.
And that was part of what I know that was given as an example. You can't classify beyond the 6-digit level. But
Right.
aside from that, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a software product, because let's say you have 100,000 part numbers, and then you have a bunch of SKUs or part numbers that you're importing. There's no way you're going to keep up with that in a spreadsheet, or
Right.
manually in any way. You're going to need to somehow sort through them and classify them. I don't mean classify as in tariff, but classify and saying, here's all my widgets,
Yes.
here's all my sprockets,
Yes.
here's all my whatever, and at least you have them in a group, and you
And
can.
also maybe like tracking changes, right?
Right.
That would be beneficial because when customs does come knocking and wants to audit, you will be able to tell them right there, well, this is why. And that's what they want to see. And these tools that you're talking about can make that piece much easier as well.
Right. It makes versioning a lot easier. You're right.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
that. This is the previous version. This is my new one. This is my new one. And then this is the life cycle of it. I suppose.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Cool.
Yes.
Anything else?
I really think it's a point I always tend to harp on, and that's your classification should be easy to explain 6 months from now.
Mm,
So, whatever note system you have, it should tell the story, right?
right. Yeah, and Andy on our podcast, my co-host in the other version of our podcast always said, if you cannot explain it to a 10-year-old, then something's wrong with that description, or that classification. It's better to
Hmm.
make sure that you're doing it correctly. So, or not
Exactly.
get too technical and confuse CBP even, right? So
Exactly. Exactly.
awesome. Okay, Ashley. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for this tip, and we'll look forward to our next episode. Have a good one.
Yes, we'll see you soon. Thank
Yes.
you.
Mhm. Bye.